Hello, and today we're talking about Tennis World Tour. My name is Matthew Kato, and I'm here with Brian Shea, and we've played the game, so this is our hands-on impressions of the game. So, starting off, just some intro things. It's Tennis World Tour. It's coming out this spring from Breakpoint Studio, which actually has some of the talent that worked on Top Spin back in the day. And it's being put up by Maximum Games on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. And Switch, and those all come out simultaneously, so that'll be pretty cool. So again, we've played it, and, for players, it's going to be a pretty basic tennis experience, the ones you kind of expect. So, you hold down the face button, the longer you hold it down, the more powerful the shot, but also kind of a risk-reward in there. And I guess, starting up, Brian, what are some of your initial thoughts?
It's kind of hard to give like a full-on this is how it's going to play, because we were told that they're still kind of fine-tuning how assistive they're going to be with their various systems in place. So our players were snapping to some balls a little bit more than I think I would have liked, or they're kind of falling back into certain positions against my instruction on the analog stick. That said, I think it played pretty smooth. I think that I like the risk reward mechanic of holding down harder. When we were in some intense rallies, I would maybe be a little bit more aggressive to try and win the point, because we were going back and forth pretty well there. But early on, I'd try to play it safe and see if I could out position you and kind of draw you off the court. But I think that what we played was pretty smooth, if not a little safe. I don't think it was breaking down any walls in terms of tennis gameplay. I think that if you've played a game like Top Spin or Virtua Tennis, or what Virtua Tennis became, or was it Top Spin or Virtua Tennis that became Tennis 2K? I think that was Virtua Tennis, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so Virtua Tennis became Tennis 2K2 or whatever it was. So if you've played one of those games, you pretty much have an idea of what to expect. But that said, it was solid gameplay, and I did enjoy it overall.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think the basics of positioning your player and, like you said, dragging your opponent around the court, your shot selection in terms of when you want to go cross court, when you want to maybe surprise someone down the line, I think those paid off like we expected them to. Mm-hmm. So certainly, you're going to want to centrally position your player, return to the center, when you have to avoid getting, really pulled across the court. And at the same time, too, if you do pull someone across the court, it's going to play out, barring if you just really overcook that shot and really, hit it out or really try to thread the needle down the line. The gameplay, you're going to be rewarded as you expect. And on the service as well, I was fooling around a bit with, trying to put things in certain places. And I think the faults, played out about as we thought. I mean, I double faulted a lot, for instance, when I really tried to, go for a certain serve or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, that's just like in real life. You might really go for it on your first serve, and then your second serve, you want to be a little bit more conservative to make sure that you get it in more so than focusing on power or spin. So yeah, that definitely checks out. I like that mechanic in the serve as well. And it's not like a two-click system where you push a button to throw it up and then you push another button to strike it. It's just kind of a hold and release to determine the power, and you use the analog stick to aim it, which I think is more faithful to the real game of tennis. But yeah.
Yeah, and we should mention that any on-screen meters or HUD that you see for gameplay can be dialed back. Those will be optional. So certainly once you get used to things, you can just take those off the HUD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was something that they were really talking about a lot, was that you're able to customize this. If you want to have this be as hardcore of a sim as possible, you can have that where there's no HUD whatsoever. It's just kind of the overlay of the score, stuff that you would see on a broadcast of a real tennis match. Or you could have it where you have the power meter on for all of your hits or strokes, and I think that most players will probably start with that, and I would actually recommend it, because it did take us a while to understand exactly the sweet spot for the timing and everything. But I think players will eventually migrate towards maybe a lower HUD presence, but maybe not completely gone.
Yep. Transitioning onto the career mode, this is one of the areas that the game sort of grows the most, or sort of makes it sort of stamp. And certainly there's the calendar events, and so you don't want to overload yourself by booking in too many tournaments, and you've got to rest. But one of the really interesting things that I've found, and you can kind of see somewhat in the gameplay, is the skill system. So there are 5 total skill slots, and the skills that you get can be upgraded. And what's interesting is that before the match, you pick out your skill loadout, and so you may, let's say, earn a skill which gives you a little bit of boost during like break points, or let's say at the beginning of a point, or the beginning of a certain game, or in the beginning of a set, or towards the end of a set, depending on how you've kind of loaded out your character. And so it's kind of a way to choose things before they happen, but also kind of know that, let's say, if you get to a certain point of a match, you might have a little bit something like a couple percentage boost in your back pocket.
Yeah, and I actually really love that. I mean, it's something that I like that UFC has done in its games, and I believe MLB The Show has done in its games, where it gives you these boosts for like situations that might not always happen. So like, every sport you hear about it, like Derek Jeter was really clutch. So like, all right, the bases are loaded in the bottom of the ninth. It activates something in his attributes that like boosts his contact rating or his power rating. So I like that, like, if you're playing a tennis player who's a really clutch player, then you have a good chance of, boosting your attributes in a tense situation, like if you're down a set or something like that. I really like that a lot. And I like that you can level them up and it's not like overpowered. Like you're not going to get like a +10 on some attribute. It's always going to be like you leveled up from a +1 in that attribute to like, I think they said like it could go up 3 times. So it goes like +3.
Yes.
So it's not like you're completely overpowering any one attribute by using these boosts. It's very subtle from what it seems.
Yeah, and layering on the equipment that you can, it's non-licensed equipment, but the equipment which will also give you a little bit of a boost for your character. It'll be interesting to see how that sort of plays into it. And there's no microtransactions, but there is randomized equipment that you will earn as you win tournaments and stuff like that. So it'll be curious for one season, I think should be pretty good, but how your character progresses, let's say through 3, 4, 5 seasons, should be pretty good. So I'm looking forward to digging into that.
Yeah, it seems really deep, and I also like that like it takes into account certain things like if you train too hard, you can get injured and actually miss a tournament. So if you're really looking forward to playing in, I don't know if they have any licensed tournaments, but like if you wanted to play in a Grand Slam or their equivalent of a Grand Slam, then you don't want to overtrain for that because you might sprain your ankle or something and actually have to miss it. Whereas other sports games, it can be like, all right, well, I'm just not going to be as good at that tournament. But no, you can outright miss it. And another thing you have to take into account is if you're in the U.S. and the tournament's in India, for example, there's a jet lag aspect that actually makes you not compete as well because you're having to travel around the world and get acclimated to that time zone, which I really like that idea. I think that's a really cool idea, and I'm hoping that like we see more things like that, not only in this game but in other sports games.
Yeah. So it's got a really pretty cool career structure. Certainly we want to get our hands on a little bit more on the gameplay and make some more determinations about those movements, about those animation transitions. But it's Tennis World Tour. It's coming out this spring on all the current systems simultaneously, and so we'll also have more on this game as we go towards the release date. So stay tuned.